Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm back once again in the placid outside studio here. And it's another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. I'm running late, obviously, because I've been trying to compile as much useful material as I possibly can to continue to sift through this version of reality that we now find ourselves in. And I'm going to try to, look at some of the things that brought us to this moment and where we are now and where I think things will be headed. Be headed is an interesting term. Um, and some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today is not going to be very light uh, and or encouraging on some level. On another level, we always are looking at what ultimately is the most positive outcome for where we are. And I do believe ultimately there's a positive outcome here because we are staring down the forces of Armageddon in a lot of ways, right? This is what's happening right now. And I've been doing lots of deep diving over the last 24 hours, some of which I want to get into and some of which I don't want to get into right now because some of the deep dive stuff is really, really dark, very dark, and uh, just not ready to like go 8 levels deep here. But we are going to go deep enough to see what's going on and how we got here and who or what is behind this event. Okay, it's very so. This is today's show will be have a lot to do with exposition and give you kind of an update as to some of the key events now that we're dealing with. So let me just wait for Chatlandia to kind of circulate and get in. And we'll probably go for about an hour today, and then I'm off to the other part of my life, which is doing readings for people, which is still very very viable. Right, it's a viable service that I provide, and I've been getting a lot of contact and people wanting to work with me lately. And as long as I can do it, and we have time, and I have time, which I try to build into as much as I can, I'm certainly willing to do that. And I had a really powerful reading yesterday with a client who lives in California, and she shared with me a story about a woman she knows who happens to be Black, African American, and this woman had I say had, that's an operative word here, had a martial arts studio in Long Beach, California, and that martial arts studio was being used to help young people, and most likely from more disenfranchised parts of the community, right? So her own community, which is going to be again more likely mostly so-called Black African American, that was her her group, and kids, and working with kids to give them structure and discipline and to show how to defend themselves and to do it in a way where there's self-discipline and not using the gifts that are given through martial arts in an exploitative fashion, right? And the mosquitoes were out early today. So they they protested against her martial arts studio and absolutely trashed it and ruined it. You're not going to hear about that on CNN or the mainstream media, um, which is, at this point, we're really having to reconcile and deal with the fact that the real tragedies, the real individual heartbreaking tragedies of individuals of any stripe or any color are not going to be reported now. Let me start to record this episode. As you know, yesterday I wound. So here we are again. Just a quick hello to everybody now who's going to be part of the recorded session of this. As you know, yesterday I played a couple of videos. One that had to do with Chazil Sun, who was a former member of Black Lives Matter, and he had a very stirring message about his experience with that group and how he felt like his community was being exploited for a very different kind of goal, a very different kind of agenda. And that video got taken down. Not my video, but that video that he, and that video was very popular. It was getting, 400,000 plus views and across multiple channels where it's been mirrored. So YouTube has decided that they don't want to disseminate that kind of information. Right. So YouTube has clearly put, drawn a line in the sand, and you cannot post anything that is counter to the revolution, because that's really what that is. That's counter-revolutionary information. They don't want that. They want to proceed with the revolution. The revolution, by the way, will be televised and is televised. Contrary to what Gil Scott Heron once said. So I'm going to get into some of this today's show. Let me just check in with Chatlandia. Let's see where you guys are at. And I keep spinning around here. Let's see, what do we have? We've got Misty Miner. Hello, Fifth Wall. Steve, Thor Mercer. What's going on, Steve? FUP77. There's Jonas. Michelle Taylor. Hello, hello, hello. Judy Anderson. Good morning. Cheryl Oshiavo. Good morning, Cheryl. There is a Lo Schiavo from the Bay Area. I think he was, where was he? Where was Lo Schiavo? Was he at USF or one of the schools out in the East Bay? Anyway, just sort of riffing here. Why can't I see myself? Because I don't see myself. Can you guys see me? Can you see my image? My visage? Because from this perspective, I cannot. All I see is a black cube. And there we go. Now I can see myself. All right. Not that I'm looking for any kind of reflection in the mirror of Echo and Narcissus, true Gemini style. I just want to make sure this thing is working. Okay. All right. We got Chris and Steve in the house. Frank Bry's here. Good morning to you. Metamedi. What's happening? Skull and the shoulder. Ani Brito. Low system. Yeah, I know. I got issues. We're working on that. I think someone from the dark shirt team must be lurking around here for intel. Well, they've got their bots and they've got their spies. That's what they have. My Skull and Warhol shoulder. My name is Amira. Skull with a funny art phase. Annie B is here. Colleen, all my friends, is here as well. Emily Moyer in the house. Emily going to be mashing. We're going to be mashing on Thursday. Uncle Glenn says the rabbit holes are merging into caverns. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's Lynn from Panama, Marie Gilson, Mary Black. Hello, Mary. And we already said Fifth Wall is here. Cindy Burton. What's happening, Cindy? JMP Love. Yes, but I look a bit hazy. Yeah, that's kind of the would love to hear a presentation about the 13th, the zodiac sign. You must be talking about Ophiuchus, the sign of the serpent in sidereal astrology. Yeah, I could do something about that. Not on today's show, though, but I could address that. We can get into that at some point. That'd be cool. Let's see, where did I go here? Sorry, just trying to keep track of the stream before we launch into today's episodic rant. And let me just try to refresh the screen one more time. I got to shut a few windows here. Let's do that. By the way, has anybody seen Bill Gates lately? Has anybody seen Dr. Anthony Fauci lately? Nope. Nope. They are AWOL, MIA, whatever you want to say. They are not on the radar, but their actions and their ideas, their projections, their ideologies have brought us to this place in time. I'm going to talk about that as well. Okay, chat is back up. All right, here we go. Let's get into it a little bit here. And dear blessed and Holy Father, Mother God of the great central sun with universal light, which is light of Sananda Emmanuel, we ask that only the highest and best information and truth come through at this time, through this live stream, and after, and that we have the courage and strength every day to face the challenges and the opportunities that lie ahead of us, that any karmic residue that we share amongst us be clarified, purified, cleansed, and removed. So one of the things that I did was I posted this on YouTube on BitChute yesterday. So that's going to be part of the program now. Is I'll be posting these after they're done on BitChute, and of course, again, yesterday, YouTube kept the live stream going, and even after I ended it. So what I did is I uploaded a new version of the show that I had downloaded, and what I made that first show unlisted, and it still might be there. You can't find it. It's not private, but it's unlisted, so it still might be floating around the YouTuberverse. And so in BitChute, I upload the show, and BitChute is a whole different beast, right? Like it's a very different world. It's a lot of people who have been kicked off of YouTube have matriculated over to BitChute, and E. Michael Jones puts his videos up on BitChute. Brother Nathaniel puts his videos up on BitChute. There is not the same level of quote unquote censorship, which I actually applaud. But there's also a higher degree of people that can, how do I say this? Troll mercilessly, right? They're merciless trollers on BitChute, and generally, in some instances, actually posing as kind of one thing and actually really being another thing, right? So there was this guy that posted about 4 or 5 comments on my video, and just because I had this like invocation, right, that I do every day now because I just want to keep the energy clean. He's posting comments about and they're big fat like meme graphics about how weak quote unquote Jesus is, and how quote unquote strong Thor is, right? So this guy knows nothing really about me. He knows really nothing about my belief systems, but he just thinks that at a certain level, right, that I look and appear to be and fit into a particular bucket or category. And then he decides that he's going to pull some kind of, Nordic, I wouldn't want to say supremacy, some Nordic shit, saying like, hey, here's the real God, motherfucker. Here, Thor destroyed ice giants. Do we still have any ice giants around? I mean, to me, it's kind of a troll moment. It's like, whatever, I don't really give a shit. If that's what makes you feel better and, gives you a sense of power or irony or, pitting one God against another and one God is better or stronger or more real, I don't give a shit, right? If that's what makes you feel good, go ahead and do it. Just go ahead and do it. If it gives you some delight or some ironic kind of rush, and in a lot of ways, right? It's also its own version of desecration. It's like desecration masquerading as some kind of ancient Aryan kind of faith, and I think it's like a deep troll. It's a total deep troll. Anyway, do whatever you want. I don't give a shit. So this will be up on my BitChute channel after today, sometime today, because the downloads are very, very slow. They're extremely slow. So let's just kind of recap where we are and try to, again, wrap our head around what's happening. So yesterday, I talked about this deal. And I talked about this at the beginning of the day. Now remember, the timing is important here, because I talked about this at the beginning of the day, that these Fortune 200 companies all got together on this round table, and they said that they were, going to put people before profits. And later in the day, the message came out that they were very much in favor, whether it was Target, whether it was CVS, whatever the company was, right? Whatever the company was, they were very much in favor of the protests, right? So they didn't give a shit. Like, they could be ransacking and burning and, tearing people's lives apart. Theoretically, Target's still an essential business, right? And nobody there, I mean, most Targets, there's nobody working. I'm sure they're working at the Target in Austin, probably, maybe some other parts of the country, but the other parts of the country, those Targets are burned to they've been looted. Nobody can work, right? And so, they're basically supporting the demise of their own business model. Now, this is important to understand, because what will happen is that we will see the eradication of brick and mortar. This is another step in the eradication of brick and mortar. Besides the fact that these corporations are setting themselves up as sort of the new de facto power. And I've been talking about this for a while now. This is the shift from the 10th house to the 11th house, where we get into groups and organizations and sort of this Aquarian model, moving away from the Capricornian model. So the Aquarian model, basically what we've seen is corporations make this hegira from the 10th house to the 11th house. That's what's happened. So now they've reestablished a new beachhead in the 11th house. And in order to do that, they have to prove that they are worthy, right? That they are worthy, that their ability to maintain a position of strength in the marketplace is really based upon by their level of tolerance and acceptance and the embrace of what theoretically is the post-311 America and really the post-311 world. Because at the end of the day, they're still going to need to have some customers, right? They're going to need to have some buy-in, theoretical buy-in. Keep that in mind, right? Put that in quotes, buy-in. So that's what they're doing, and they're establishing themselves, and it's a massive virtue signal. Ben and Jerry's came out yesterday and had a statement that said white supremacy must end. So this whole thing now, which started off with whoever this theoretical cop is, whoever this theoretical George Floyd is, it started out with this event. And there are a number of people who had nothing to do with that, right? Nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that event. And because of that now, that event has what they've done is they've metastasized everything to make every single person Derek Chauvin. Right? Let me be clear. Every single so-called white person is now Derek Chauvin. Every so-called black person, theoretically, in this model has become George Floyd. This is what that moment has created. And it is a moment that is rife for exploitation and social engineering and managing. Well, managing is a loose word at this point, but social engineering and activating a certain part of the populace or a certain part of the mass to respond to what's taking place. So this is very, very significant. Now, Ben and Jerry's turns that moment into this political statement that we must end white supremacy. Like, where the fuck are the white supremacists? Where are the white supremacists? I keep looking for white supremacists. Like, I live in one of the most, white cities in the United States, founded by Germans. And I've looked really hard for the white supremacists here. You would think that a town founded by Germans would be like a bed, like it would be a pulsing heart of white supremacy, that we'd all gather together at night and have meetings under the swastika, right? You think I would bump into a white supremacist at every turn and corner. Yeah, that's just not happening. That's not happening. And I'm just using where I live as an example, because theoretically, well, geez, where does white supremacy come from? It comes from Germany, right? And I live in a place that was founded by Germans who, by the way, left Germany because they wanted to be free. They were the free thinkers, and they wanted to have a different kind of relationship with religion, and they wanted to have a different kind of relationship with science. They wanted to have a different relationship with whatever was happening in Germany. So they came here also to do Braunfels and to the Hill Country. They were called the free thinkers. And who knows? They may have been first wave liberals. I don't know. Right. All I do know is that the town that I live in had one of the few treaties, theoretically, that was honored and upheld with the Comanche. So there's statues in town that actually commemorate this, and to this day, well, almost to this day, that that the Comanche have come, and they come here once a year, and they have their powwow and their ceremony, and they had it until, guess what? A group, a lodge group that has the letter G prominently emblazoned in their logo, bought their land. They bought their land. It was right next to a place called Fort Scott. And Fort Scott has this kind of Texas Ranger memorial thing. You walk into Fort Scott, and it basically is an outlet chain for that group's paraphernalia. You can get, hats with G's on them. I mean, so Texas Rangers, which is part of Fort Scott, and the G group, it's all there. They went out and they bought the land. So now they can't have their ceremonies. So theoretically, that group has broken that treaty. Theoretically. And I have heard, although this cannot be confirmed, that not only did they buy the land and keep them from having their ceremony and their powwow, but they even dressed up and had their own ceremony. And it's like, it's just, to me, it's that. Does that qualify as white supremacy? I don't know. I don't hang out with those people. And I generally think that that's a very, very disruptive group in general. Okay. In general. But for a long time, this area, has been okay with that until those guys decided that they wanted to fuck with things. Ordo ab chow. Right. But now everybody's theoretically a white supremacist. You're either a white supremacist or you're aggrieved and a victim. Hello, Mars and Pisces. We talked about this. Mars and Pisces is the aggression or the martial activity of the victim, right? But again, with Pisces, Pisces is ruled by Neptune. And when we have Neptune in the mix, there is a potential for a great deal of deception. A lot of deception is going on. And not only that, but a lot of misplaced values are also being injected into this situation. So yesterday got very heavy on the streets of America. One of the things you'll no doubt read about or hear about is that a 77, there's a very interesting number, same age again as Carl Mankey, who was the barbershop owner in Michigan, who defied Governor Whitler's edicts to not cut hair, right? He's the same age as David Dorn. So we have, again, duality and polarity, right? Black and white, both 77. We see 77 as a mirror. And apparently David Dorn came out and decided I guess he was retired, and he decided that he wanted to help the people of Chicago, and he got a bullet to the head. And no doubt the spin of that will be, well, that's Trump's fault. Trump created it, right? Because Trump created this situation. And because of the situation, David Dorn felt compelled to assist and then put himself into harm's way. Now, if Trump had not been in office and had not created the situation, therefore, David Dorn would have been just fine with his retirement, and he could have just kicked back and, watched the NBA playoffs, which would be happening right now, and all would be good. But unfortunately, this is what happened, and David Dorn misguided, probably self-hating, and this is a term. If you go into the bowels of Twitter, and trust me, Twitter has bowels. If you go into the bowels of Twitter, you will see this word come up again and again and again. There are two words that you will see in the bowels of Twitter. They are self-hating and coon. You'll see that again and again, right? This is part of the nomenclatura, of the revolution. And some people on the other side, on the social Marxist side, because make no mistake, this is a social Marxist revolution. They will say that his life is a worthy sacrifice for the end game or the goal of the revolution, and that people will have to die and be sacrificed along the way. And it doesn't matter what skin color they are. It doesn't matter what kind of social affinity or representation of any class they are. Like they are fodder, right? They are fodder for something greater. People die along the way in order for the revolution to occur. That's how it will be justified in a particular place. And on the conservative side of things, you're going to hear a lot about David Dorn. That'll be a big story on the conservative side. So, but again, we're getting this kind of polaric view of the whole thing, and it will tear people apart. It will tear you apart if you allow yourself to be really engaged in this dualistic and polaric piece. You can't stick your head in the sand. You stick your head in the sand, you're gonna be in trouble here. Right? You have to have your high beams on. But it takes a real kind of attuned state of mind and consciousness not to get pulled into this. And if you can't achieve that, if you can't work with that, then I suggest that you stay out of some of the really grimy details here, because they're highly, highly upsetting. Very upsetting. And not just for any one particular group, but for the planet in general. And this is a much bigger thing, right? It's a much, much bigger thing than just sort of seeking justice for so-called George Floyd. But here in Fredericksburg, where we theoretically have white supremacists, right, in the Hill Country, the publisher of the newspaper is going to lay out a big story on a big piece on white privilege. He's going to scold us and remind us just, how bad we are. And this is the guy that came out swinging against fluoride in our campaign. Typical. That's coming out today. So another thing you may hear about or you may not hear about is that there was a gunfight that went down in New York last night, and it had to do with somebody picking up a gun. Apparently they'd killed somebody earlier in the night, and they were standing off against a group of NYPD police. And there's a video. It's very clear in the video. There is dialogue. The people are telling him, put down the gun, put down the gun, put down the gun. Decides he's going to take on the NYPD, and he gets hit with about 19 bullets. Now it's being spun that that guy was 13 years old. That's not true. He was 34. But we can see how quickly reality gets modified. So-called reality gets modified very, very quickly. So it's not, and people have been programmed in their own way to play this matrix-like role, right? But they're actually not just creating the matrix, but they're also kind of enabling it, right? And it's all through the Twitterverse. They'll just pick up on the fact that the guy was 13 years old. They tweet it, it goes viral, and boom, you've got literally thousands and thousands of minds thinking that it was a kid that was killed, and that's not the case at all. And then here we go, Mars and Pisces symbology. And you read the comments, and it's like, damn, did they have to shoot him 19 times? That's excessive force. And it's like, what do you think the cops are going to do? Well, in most cases, they're not doing anything. But in a situation like that, where the guy's got a gun and they're being threatened, what do you think they're going to do? Do you think that they're going to let him shoot them? What kind of world are these people living in? I'll tell you what kind of world they're living in. They're living in an entitled world that they've been entitled all their life. They've been entitled, and they've been given passes every step of the way. Meanwhile, they've been indoctrinated to reject the system. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with disassembling parts of the system, because there are parts of the system that are oppressive to all people, not just one particular group. And that's true. Okay. There are parts of the system that are not fair at all. They're not fair at all. They don't represent the people in general, in my estimation. And that deserves, a fair amount of criticism. But it doesn't deserve how it's being played out, which is basically burning everything down. Like, this is burn it down culture. This is cancel culture. This is burn it down culture. And this is what we're seeing. And it is intentional, by the way. It is intentional. And at its core, it is satanic. It is absolutely satanic, because it's promoting an inversion, right? An inversion of reality. And this is what the satanic energy ultimately winds up espousing. And people don't know it. They don't understand it. But they certainly are participating in it, and they're getting something. There's an exchange going on, and not just the so-called redistribution of wealth, right? Because that's what's taking place theoretically. Whatever's happening with these stores, that's a redistribution of wealth. That's the justification of it on some level. And then you have these corporations, which are basically taking a knee for the whole thing, because they know that the government and the governmental model, or the Capricornian model, is shifting and moving towards that 11th house environment, and they're setting themselves up. They're setting themselves up to be the arbiters of social justice, the friends of social justice, when theoretically the smoke clears. So, there's a lot happening, and this thing is, it's not going to go away until the energy is expended. Now, on the one hand, when we deal with a lot of volatility very quickly, right? It's like a fire. It's like a hot fire. It burns, and eventually it will burn out. But at what cost or at what price, will that process take place? What we saw with the coronavirus scam and COVID-19 is that it was something that was more of a slow burn, but again, it was an actionable strategy. The strategy was lock people up in their homes, get them to follow orders, get them to don masks, which I've already made the reference to yesterday, that when they donned the masks, they are now symbolically identifying with the so-called protest and the so-called revolution, and that de facto they are accomplices in their own unwitting and enabling fashion statements, right? That's part of it. Another part was the demoralization piece, and I'm going to talk more about, I'm going to play some Yuri Bezmenov today, just to bring this home, because this is a very important part of where this is going to head. And so the demoralization piece is important. Now, again, theoretically, I'm going to put theoretical around the quotes, is that a lot of these so-called protesters, there are two groups. There are the protesters and there are the rioters and looters. And sometimes they overlap and sometimes they don't. But they're all, kind of doing a group hug right now. That group hug will only last so long, by the way. And I'll talk about that. But, if theoretical America was not shut down, some of these people might actually have jobs, although in some cases, I don't think that's really the case. They would have jobs. They would be graduated from college right now. We'd be watching graduation ceremonies, but instead that's not happening, right? So these graduating classes were people that, if they were, sophomores or juniors in college, they might be taking, their trip to Europe or, whatever they do these days, but they wouldn't be doing this. So now they have a whole group of people, restless, unemployed, underemployed, getting some kind of stimulus from the government, and also probably getting paid significantly to quote unquote protest, because a man's got to eat, got to put food on the table. So COVID-19 or Corona created the conditions in order for this to happen. This was the tinderbox for what we're seeing now. And people like Tony Fauci and Birx, even Mike Pence, and even Donald Trump are complicit. Now some of them may not be complicit in a direct sense, and some of them might be complicit in a direct sense, but they are responsible for a lot of what's taken place. They created the conditions for what's taken place. And we're seeing the result of this now. And it's not good. It's not good. And, I was thinking about these fusion centers. And the fusion centers, we pour billions of dollars of taxpayer money into the NSA. The NSA runs these fusion centers. They're all over the country. And they're very, very sophisticated data gathering centers that allow for the capture of information across a number of platforms, whether it's phone, whether it's your email, whether it's your text, Also profiling things like what you buy at the store, when you go to the store, how much you spend, compiling complex relationships with people that you text to, your social media presence, what you tweet, where you tweet it, how you tweet it, your Facebook post. They compile all this stuff, all of it. And they're on top of almost every single form of communication and information transaction in this country, spreading out globally. And their partners in their intelligence gathering are these Israeli companies who have built the spine of data gathering and intelligence. So we spend billions of dollars a year compiling, gathering, listening, collating all this data. And what has it done? What has it done? What value has it brought to this particular moment? Now you go to their website. I'll show you their website. I went to their website this morning. I'll show it to you. You go to their website. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on. Let's see what we have here. Let me pull this up. See, they're even tracking my going to their website, right? And I'll show you what their website is about. They have a website right here. By the way, I never liked the term homeland security. I mean, you want to talk about reeking of kind of Nazi kind of symbolism. Homeland security was not a term that I was very fond of, right? So they've got a whole series of fusion centers all around the country. And basically what they do, right, is they are here, they're owned and operated state and local entities designated by the governor of their state. So here, I'll just show it to you. It's right there. So, this is what they're, the prior two types of fusion centers. Primary fusion centers. A primary fusion center typically provides information sharing and analysis for an entire state. These centers are the highest priority for the allocation of federal resources, meaning they're getting a shit ton of money, including the deployment of personnel and connectivity with federal data systems. And recognized fusion centers typically provides information sharing for analysis for a major urban area. Are we not witnessing what's taking place in major urban areas? As the federal government respects the authority of state governments to designate fusion centers, any designated fusion center not designated as primary fusion center is referred to as a recognized fusion center. They're all over the place. They have these fusion centers in every single state. Gathering data. And their stated goal is to protect. This is what they say. Their stated goal is to protect the homeland. That's what their stated goal is. How's that working out? How's that working out? You would think that with all these fusion centers, with their ability to listen in, collate data, use the highest forms of artificial intelligence, synthesizing information, that maybe, just maybe, they might have some insight into what's coming. That maybe, just maybe, they might actually be able to track and trace these LGs or these comms in real time. where they're exchanging information, strategizing. You would think that maybe they might have some, clarity into that situation based on all the money we're spending, right, on this whole thing. And you may think that perhaps they might be able to actually do something about it, right? Pass the information on. Here we have a group of users, right? We've recognized a group of users. We've recognized these cell phones. Pass the information on. Turn it off. Cut the cell phones off. Make it difficult for them to be able to strategize and coordinate. Yeah, it's not really happening. Oh, but maybe, just maybe, they're just gathering more information, more intelligence, more data, so they connect, bigger pieces around the whole thing. Remember, James Clapper ran the NSA. He was, out to get, Donald Trump. He's one of the group that was in on ousting Trump and ousting the Trump presidency. And it wasn't just Clapper. You had Brennan, CIA, you had the FBI, James Comey. They were all in on it. Okay, all in on it. So what kind of help do you think that those agencies are going to provide at present? Do you think they're going to provide information? Do you think they're going to, take one step further than they need to take in order to somehow theoretically promote the homeland for a guy that went on to essentially attack them and take them on? Remember, Chuck Schumer said, we got 6 ways to Sunday to basically make him pay for his egregious actions against the intelligence community. He was very, he was not, those were not empty or idle threats on Chuck Schumer's part. Those were true. So even though now we have all this sophisticated intelligence gathering, it may be of absolutely no use if they're not willing to share it, or if they're not willing to deploy it in a certain fashion. And this part is really troubling, by the way. It's troubling because, again, I want to zoom out a little bit, right? I want to zoom out to the big picture, because that's really kind of, where this thing is. It's a big picture event. And the big picture, and I've been talking about this for years, is the Bolshevik overthrow of, this country, and not just this country. It will be global, right? It will be global, and it will be the version of the New World Order. And in order for them to have this New World Order, they need to burn everything down, including this one theoretical place, which theoretically stands for this idea of a country and or nationalism. And nationalism, by the way, has been merged with fascism. So you cannot be a nationalist. You have to be a globalist at this point in order to separate yourself out from being condemned or labeled as a fascist or a racist or a white supremacist or any of those things. So this is what we're dealing with now, and it is a global strategy. You're starting to see massive protests begin to take place in other parts of the world, and not just the United States. You'll see them. We're seeing them in Paris, no doubt. We'll see them in London. We'll see them all over Europe. Sweden, probably. Sweden's been rushing headlong into this reality for the last decade. They've been waving the flag for it, so no doubt Sweden will be a part of it, and they'll have their own version. So this is where all this is. This is where this is going, right? This is where this is going. And they are, and if they're successful, this is not just to derail an election. It's not just to derail an election. It's not just to stop Trump from having his rallies. It's not just to, derail the economy and make his presidency this kind of toxic sort of cesspool and an image of non-success. It's a vehicle. That is a vehicle for the ultimate goal, which is to overthrow everything. This is where we're headed, and they're using duality. They're using this dualistic dark alchemy in order to fuel it. I'm going to show you a picture before I get into Yuri Bezmenov. I'm going to show you a picture of I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it's worth looking at. It is let's do this. Is Bill de Blasio's daughter, who had been arrested for protesting. And I'm not showing you this picture. Some of you have already seen it, but I'm not showing you this picture to, typecast her. Let me just do this. I'm showing you the picture for a very specific reason, and this was her mugshot. Oh, it's totally being scrubbed. It is totally being scrubbed in real time. All right, let me go back here. Because so what Google is doing, and I should know better, but what Google is doing is they're creating sort of this news speak in real time. So let me actually go to another source. I want to show you the picture because there's a quality of the picture that is very disturbing. It's a very disturbing picture. So let's go here. Oh, interesting. Boy, they're scrubbing the shit out of this. I'm having a hard time finding the picture now. Uh, let me just try to describe it to you. She looks absolutely possessed, absolutely and utterly possessed. If you can see the picture, it's like she has no pupils whatsoever, none, none. It's a really disturbing picture in a lot of ways. I wish I can find it. Damn. Just do it one more time. I really want to put it up here. See what I can get here with this search result. Here we go. I found it. Bada bing. Sorry, the wheels of the internet. The squirrels are taking a bit longer. Can't even get it now. They have totally scrubbed this thing. Can't even get it. How about that? Let me just try it again. Oh, here it is. I found it. All right, finally. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the face of the revolution. Right here. Hold on. I was going to stop the share. Hold on. Let me fire this thing up one more time. Where'd it go? Here it is. This is your face of the revolution. I don't care whose daughter this is. This person looks utterly possessed. Utterly possessed. And I feel like that this is a state that is probably more common than not as it inserts itself into the, this mob mentality. Maybe some very powerful drugs are involved here too as well. I mean, there are no pupils in those eyes. Absolutely none. Here's your face of the revolution. It's disturbing. It's disturbing. Okay, so we're seeing now this kind of supplication to this energy, right? There's a supplication now taking place from corporations to certain police departments, certainly academia, the sports world. There's a supplication, but because now everybody is kind of all in, right? They're going all in on this thing. And this is an interesting example of energy, right? And I've talked about this before, is that there's this front runner consciousness. And really there are two groups in society. There's predators and then there's prey. There's a third group, but in order to be the third group, you have to be able to move out of that duality, and you have to see things from a completely different level. And you have to be able to live your life from that level, but not necessarily deny that polarity, right? So there are two groups, really. This is part of the theme of Cloud Atlas. And I was watching a fistful, was it The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? And Clint Eastwood said to Eli Wallach, there are two types of people in the world: the people who have guns and the ones who do what they're told, right? And that's a line, and that's a clear line. So basically what Eastwood has said, look, there are two types of people. There's a group that has power and there's a group that doesn't have power. And so what happens is that people want to align themselves, right, with the so-called power because they don't want to be the other group. They don't want to be the group that becomes the prey to the predator. So what they'll do is they'll join in with the predatory class or the predatory caste or the predatory consciousness because they don't want to be on the other side. And so there are people that are making clear choices, and some of them can convolute it and twist it up into moral or philosophical, and I've even seen kind of religious justification. But really what they're doing is they're saying, look, I don't want to be on that side because that side is a losing side. That is a losing proposition. And then as the media and all these, so-called Hollywood figures and stars and the sports world and everybody else that is celebrating and triumphing this moment in time, people who are either scared or want to be a part of this other gang, whatever that gang looks like, they will join in because they don't want to be on the other side. And that brings me back to that Joe Strummer documentary, The Future is Unwritten, where he talks about growing up and being in public school in England. He saw it. He said there were two versions of reality. in the public school system in England. You were either going to bully or you were the ones that were going to be bullied. It's very brutish. It's a brutish model. It's a brutish reduction of the human experience. So you're going to see people in just, hey, we're going over here because this is where the tide and the momentum is. And we want to be on the side of the tide and the momentum and thinking that we're on the side of history and validating it or justifying it or whatever they're doing, right? But really what they're doing is they're convincing themselves that they don't want to be on the other side because the other side theoretically has been demonized to the point where it is on the endangered species list. And that other side, by the way, has nothing to do with color, although color plays a role in it. You know, color is part of this objectification process. But that other side, there are people on that other side that they're not, you know, bound by the color of their skin. That other side is connected to truth and values of truth and freedom and sovereignty. And those values those are individual values, by the way. Those are individual values. And we are not living in a time where the individual or the individual value is supported. We're living in a time where groups and mobs and organizations and foundations, these are the entities that are being supported by the media, not the individual. So the individual, it's not bound by skin tone or, you know, even religious affiliation. It's a consciousness. It's a consciousness. And the individual is on the endangered species list. And I've had conversations with a number of people, you know, that are not so-called white. And their thoughts are clear and true, and they understand what's taking place in this reality. But they will be demonized. They'll be called self-hating. They'll be called sellouts, coons, whatever their so-called, you know, place of origination stems from. It's happening. And so there are people that don't want to be associated with that at all. They want no skin in that game. And so what do? They'll jump ship. And they'll be part of this other group. And they'll have the most wonderful, most enlightened, you know, most compassionate, most empathic, you know, most, you know, kumbaya kind of spirit. And they're in for a rude awakening. A very rude awakening. And even the so-called protesters and rioters, right? If this thing goes full tilt boogie and somehow the script is flipped and this country and this world becomes a very, very different reality, very different operating system. Somebody's got to govern it. Somebody's got to control it. And I can tell you right now who's going to be in charge. And it won't be the rioters. It won't be the protesters. It won't be woke America. They will not be in charge of whatever happens after. They won't be. They think they'll be great. They'll be rewarded based on their loyalty, based on their, you know, being woke or being down. There will be no place for them in the post-revolutionary America or the post-revolutionary planet. They don't understand this. They don't understand this. And even, you know, so-called aggrieved Black America, who is really fired up right now and really turning and being fueled by this racial division, right? They think that they're going to run the show. part of that community thinks they're going to run the show. I don't think that's plausible. I don't think that's plausible. It's not entirely plausible. And I'll tell you why. Because the people that are going to be running the show, they're going to have a very different view of reality, and they do not want a revolutionary spirit as part of their reality. That does not work that way. They don't want the revolutionary spirit as part of what they do, and this happens with every regime change. I'm going to play Yuri Bezmenov, and we're going to get into him, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to sum this thing up. And it's an important thing to wrap your head around, because these people who are participating, especially a lot of these Antifa dupes, they're going to be on the front line of being eliminated once this thing is over and done with. They have no idea. They have no idea what's in store for them. None. Just useful pawns. That's what people mostly are. When they get agitated and they're being fueled and driven by long-standing grievances, grudges, hatred, injustices, whatever they are, right? They become pawns in a game. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. And when this global mind, this totalitarian socialistic global mind engages, it uses whatever they can as their frontline troops. Once they're done with them, they are done with them. They have achieved their purpose. They have no use for them after that. Because the world that will be instituted, the governance and the control that will be instituted, will be anything unlike they ever thought, imagined, or hoped for. But they can't see it. They can't see it now, because they're either blinded by rage and a deep sense of retribution, or they're somehow being advanced by some bizarre and twisted ideological spirit, driven by some paradigm that things are going to get better and more equal and more just. And all these revolutions have always been run by the super rich. Okay. You got to keep that in mind. They've been run by the super rich. They've always been run by the super rich. Where do you think they get the money from? The super rich want to get rid of the middle class. They want to get rid of them. And the middle class has been ripe for the picking in this country for a very long time. Middle class, and I don't care, again, what race or ethnicity you are, the middle class got really soft, really, really soft. And then it got distracted, majorly distracted. And then we began to completely become disconnected and disassociated with any real values. And there are a number of things that also, happened along the way. The ideological subversion, it's all part of it, right? So they want to wipe out the middle class, and they will use the lower classes, the more economically deprived, in order to do that. And once their job is done, once the middle class is eliminated, those people will no longer be of use. And they think that they'll be in positions of power. And maybe a few nominal people will be chosen to kind of watch over and become the sort of the overseers, the managers of the new paradigm. But those are a select few. Those are a select few. And the rest, they have an end game in store for them, but they don't see it and they can't see it. And once they do see it, it will be too late. So let's get into some Bezmenov. Let me see if I can find him here. I got a ton of things open window-wise. The Chaz Sons video is taken down. That's an important thing to wrap your head around. They don't want that getting out. No how, no way. Yesterday was Blackout Tuesday. Today is Whiteout Wednesday, if you're not paying attention to your memes. And it's interesting that, that the black square was part of this meme, right? Or part of the symbology. The black square being the Saturnic hypercube. So let's get into a little Bezmenov here. And I know a lot of you have seen it. If you haven't seen it, you're in for, I wouldn't call it a treat. It's not really what I call it, but you are in for an awakening. So here we go. And I hope I can hear this thing. All right, away we go. And of course, there's no sound. Hold on. Part of this meme, right? Or part of the symbology. The black square being the Saturnic hypercube. So let's get into a little Bezmenov here.
And usually it's linked to espionage.
I know a lot of you have seen it. If you haven't seen it,
bridges,
you're
trains,
in for, I wouldn't call it a treat. It's not really what I call it. You are in for an awakening. So here we go.
What I'm going to talk about now has absolutely nothing to do with the cliche of espionage.
I hope I can hear this thing.
Or KGB activity of collecting information.
All right, away we
so
go.
The greatest mistake or misconception, I think, is that whenever we are talking about KGB, for some strange reason,
part of this meme, right, or part of the symbology, the black square being the Saturnic hypercube,
and quote-unquote experts on Soviet affairs.
So let's get into a little Bezmenov here.
And usually it's linked to espionage.
I know a lot of you have seen it. If you haven't seen it,
to steal trains of some supersonic jet, cloak and dagger.
It's not really what I call it. You are in for an awakening.
Sell it to the military. What I'm going to talk about now has absolutely nothing to do with the cliche of espionage.
I can hear this thing.
Or KGB activity of collecting information.
All right.
The greatest Soviet mistake and KGB or misconception, I think, outside is that whenever we are talking about KGB, for some strange reason,
part of this meme, right? Part of the symbology, the black square being the Saturnic hypercube,
and quote-unquote experts only 10 to 15%.
So let's get into a little Bezmenov here.
And usually it's linked to espionage.
I'm having some issues with the sound. I've got to reset the table on this. My apologies. My apologies. We're going to get there. In fact, we'll even get a better, I'll get a better clip to play. This is the one we want to talk about right here. This is it. This is the clip. This is 5 minutes, maybe some of the most important 5 minutes you'll see on YouTube.
We're
going to get there.
Opinion of many defectors.
In fact, we'll even get a better.
Only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85%
I'll get a better,
is a slow process,
better clip,
which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language.
This is the one we want to talk about right here. This is it.
Warfare. What it basically means is to
this is the clip. This is 5 minutes. Maybe some of the most important 5 minutes
to such an extent
you'll see on
YouTube. No one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow. To my
We're going to get there.
opinion of many defectors.
In fact, we'll even get a better.
Only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85%
I'll get a better.
is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid of society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society.
And yet these people who've been programmed and, as you say, in place and
Yes.
who are favorable to an opening with the Soviet concept, these are the very people who would be marked for extermination in this country?
Most of them, yes. Simply because the psychological shock when they will see in future what the beautiful society of equality and social justice means in practice, obviously they will revolt. They will be very unhappy, frustrated people. And the Marxist-Leninist regime does not tolerate these people. Obviously they will join the links of dissenters, dissidents.
Yes.
Unlike in present United States, there will be no place for dissent in future Marxist-Leninist America. Here you can get popular like Daniel Ellsberg and filthy rich like Jane Fonda for being dissident, for criticizing your Pentagon. In future, these people will be simply squashed like cockroaches. Nobody is going to pay them nothing for their beautiful, noble ideas of equality. This they don't understand, and it will be greatest shock for them, of course. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years. Actually, it's overfulfilled because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization.
So that is probably 5 minutes of the most important video you'll see on YouTube. And it's not just the outcome of the more than willing participants who assist in the overthrow of a system. Although that's clear, and Bezmenov makes no bones about it, that there will be no place for them in a post-revolutionary America. None whatsoever. But it's also this idea that people cannot assess information independently. That they have been so demoralized and then reinserted with new programs and brainwashed that they're unable to mentally, intellectually, psychologically be able to break that information down and accept it. This is why certain people, and we've talked about NPCs, and we've talked about soulless people, whatever, right? This is why a lot of these people cannot see what's going on. They've been so demoralized, and they've had their programming replaced and inserted with new programming that they're not going to wake up. They're not. And the only way out is what Bezmenov has talked about, which is you've got to have at least 15 years of instituting new ideas and new programs that would be, more either nationalistic or, connected to a different set of values. You have to raise a generation in order to embody them. And they've just been obliterating generation after generation after generation. Now to the point where even if they tried to institute those values, people would be very, very resistant, extremely resistant. So it's an important video. And unfortunately, the people that are participating in whatever's taking place now, they won't see it. And even if they did see it, they wouldn't be able to see it, just like Bezmenov has clearly articulated. And if this thing does tilt or flip, and there's no guarantee right now that it will, even though it seems as though the media and the momentum around this is certainly supporting that idea. But if it did, I can tell you right now who will be running this country. It'll be a combination of the Chinese and the Russians. And the Chinese, they don't play. And a lot of these woke revolutionaries, who think that that the prizes and the trophy of liberation are flat screens, TVs, and some brand new kicks. They have no idea. They have no idea how the Chinese roll. They have no idea at all. And they'll be in for an extremely rude awakening. They just won't be tolerated. Because one of the things that the Chinese are very, very attached to, right, are useful people. They want useful people. They want people that will follow orders. They want people that will work in factories for, whatever their version of the living wage is. They want people who will turn other people in. They want people who will follow the protocols of their social credit and social credit score. They want absolute obedience, but they want useful people. They don't want non-useful people. They have no need for non-useful people. In that society, you must function. You must function, and you must work, and you must play a part, whatever that part is. Now, the other side of this is that, of course, we're living and moving rapidly towards the AI age, where a lot of the jobs that we once had, theoretically, they won't be there. We'll have robots that'll be, or high levels and high degree of more automation than we can even begin to imagine. So there's going to be need for less humans, period, end of story. And I say humans, and I'm not talking about any class or, any race. I'm talking about people who are, bipeds, occupying a body, or at least renting their body out, whatever, right? I mean, there's no use. There'd be no use for as many humans. And that's another part of this. People don't understand this. They think that something wonderful is going to happen, that there's going to be this great fucking kumbaya moment. And we're all going to hold hands and we're going to dismantle a system. And the new system is going to be more fair than the old system was. You know, and there's going to be this ritual sacrifice, you know, this massive and collective cremation of care for the old system. And that the new system will be far more equitable. And I'm telling you right now, that is an utter pipe dream. Utter pipe dream. There may be moments of celebration, jubilation. You know, they may let them play around for a while and feel like this is really, you know, the best thing since Ben and Jerry's. I don't know. But that moment will end. The Jubilee moment will end. And that's when they'll meet their new masters. And they will not like it. And they'll wish that they may have done something different or taken a different tack and a different course. It's kind of like when people live their lives in a way that is really, I don't know, sinful, maybe might be the word, unaware, selfish, and they get to the end of their life and they begin to see what's calling from them on the other side. And they're terrified beyond belief. And we have some examples of that in history. Apparently it happened to Stalin, one of the worst dictators, murderers on the planet, lionized, turned into a culture hero by people like FDR and Winston Churchill, the strong man, right? By the time Stalin was getting ready to hit the sheets permanently, he saw what was coming. He cried like a baby. Anton LaVey, same story. He began to see who was waiting for him on the other side. And it was no party. He realized very quickly that the choices he had made and the ideology he'd espoused led him to a very, very different place. I think there might have even been some talk that Mao had something similar, right? So when these people get to the moment where their new masters are asserting their new doctrine, their new program, they're going to have that moment. They're going to have that moment. It'll be too late. It'll be too late. There'll be nothing that they can do about it. If that reality unfolds, it'll be too late. Because they will be staring into hell. And they'll realize at that point that they were completely misled and totally wrong. But it's okay. It feels good now. It feels good now. And for a lot of the so-called woke right protesters, terrorists, whether you're Antifa or, you know, whether you think that this is the 2020 version of Selma and you want to march side by side. Well, I'll tell you what, I've been in the bowels of Twitter, and the other side of this revolution, they got no use for you. No use for you. Period. End of story. Right? So if it unfolds in that direction, you're going to say, hey, we supported you. We were with you. We were down. We were woke. We walked with you. That won't matter shit. It won't mean for shit. Trust me. Trust me. I've done a lot of block walking, as they say on Twitter. It won't be pretty. And then that group would have their own, right? They'd have their own, I wouldn't say comeuppance, but they'd have to deal with their own new version of reality after that happens, because that's when the new masters roll into town. That's when they roll into town. And then all of a sudden, their reality becomes very different, and they'll have a holy fuck moment. Again, trust me on this. It'll be a holy fuck moment. So there was this one guy who came into my YouTube channel for a while, and he stopped coming around. And he would make fun of me. He would talk about, this isn't Johnny Baseball's America anymore. And he was, so-called African American, right? So-called black. And I said, do you know what the Chinese did to the slaves? The Chinese had slaves, by the way. Do you know what they did to the males? They castrated them. They basically said, we want to get like one good season out of these guys. And that's it. We don't want them around. Look it up. That's how they roll. That is exactly how they roll. So people need to keep this in mind, right? They think that the revolution is going to be fucking Disneyland. It's going to be a new theme park that they're building. And it won't be. By the time the dust settles and the ashes settles and the fire is cool and all the wealth has been redistributed, the horror of the new reality will quickly set in. And people will understand in stages and in waves that they had made egregious mistakes and egregious errors. It's going to happen. But for now, they're floating on a cloud of sympathy and virtue signal and rage and justification. And it will ultimately lead them. And I'm talking about everybody. I'm talking about everybody who participates in this thing. Nobody gets out of this alive. It will lead all of them to their own demise. So I'm giving people a mile-high view, a bird's eye view, and they're not going to be able to hear it. They're just not going to be able to hear it. Because, like Bezmenov says, they've been demoralized. And then they've been reprogrammed through the trauma of demoralization. And this whole event with George Floyd is about demoralization. It's a major demoralization operation. And so the only way that they can somehow reconcile this thing is to have, enabling and a kumbaya moment. And they're both very, very dangerous strategies. Very dangerous. They're playing a dangerous game, and they don't even know it. They don't even know it. Now, the game isn't over, right? The game is not over by any stretch. This for many people will serve as a very rude awakening. If you're not awake now, let me tell you right now, you better be. This is the wake-up call. This is the thunderclap. This is 2020. This is the Aeon. 2020, 20 times 2, the end of one world and the beginning of another. And if you're not hearing Gabriel's horn right now, you are missing the call. Big time. So this moment in time will serve to wake people up. People that are on the fence, people that are, kind of in this kind of gray area. But when they do wake up, they will wake up into terror. I'll tell you that right now. They will wake up into terror. They're going to see what's happening with the world, and they won't know what the fuck to do. But it is waking them up. Trust me. All right. So I do have some other things to say before we shove off here. I went a lot longer than I thought I would, but there's a lot to say these days. And before I do sign off, I do want to I like to end on a positive note because, we went down some very dark rabbit holes today, I think. And the positive piece here really, again, is that this is part of this test, this big spiritual test for people that are willing to participate in this thing, right? Participate in it from a conscious perspective. And, we don't get to where we're going without more than likely going through however long that sewage canal that Andy Dufresne had to get through in the Shawshank Redemption to experience liberation, right? And this is part of it. This is part of the process. And it's going to take fortitude, and it's going to take clarity, and it's going to take a lot of faith and self-love and self-respect. This is where we are right now. These are the times. These are those times. If you're ready for it, if you're ready for these times, we'll get through it. We will get through it. And there will be something on the other side of this. And I'm not saying that that something will be the perfected version of their cultural revolution. Okay. I'm not saying that that's the outcome. But we're going to have to face that. We're going to have to deal with that in order to get to a different outcome. And a one that is truly more just, truly more fair, truly more empowering, truly more loving, and truly more free. And this is what I believe all people really want, deep in their hearts and deep in their souls. But because of the social engineering and the demoralization, it has become segmented and tribalized. And now it's a ritual exercise of retribution and revolution. But that's really not where the true potential is. All right. I'm going to get out of here for today. Let me check in with you guys in Chatlandia. See where you're at. What's going on with you? Let me find you. I know you're here somewhere. I had you here before. There you are. Let's see what we have. I don't know. The word hope kind of before me. Hope, gnosis, faith, prefer faith and vision. Yep. It's the only thing that makes sense. What else do we have here? Let's see. What do we have? Chapel Perilous. Yes. Let's see. Good luck, Robert. There are hundreds of posts. All good. Good. Excellent. All right. What else do we have here? I heard many bad things about Mother Teresa. I think Mother Teresa was a dude, by the way. I think she was a dude. What we are going through is like a test for a doctoral degree. Bonnie's right. Got to keep mind and soul and heart sharp and focus and create new path. Let's see. Good energy or good analogy. Thanks, Michael. It's all about being conscious and present. Yeah, being conscious and present while you sit through a horror movie is really the ultimate test, right? It's really the ultimate test. All right. Thank you, everybody. You can reach me at robertphoenix.com. Again, I'm still doing readings for people. And believe me, there are plenty of very pertinent reasons or pertinent potentials when it comes to the astrological chart and the evolution of the individual, whether it has to do with work or relationship, there's a lot there still. Now, I got a lot planned for Sunday night. We're going to get into on Sunday night the early Gen Z generation, which is playing a large part in this cultural revolution. And this is the group that was born 1996, right around 2001, late 2000, early 2001, where they had Pluto and Sagittarius and Uranus and Neptune in the sign of Aquarius, which are revolutionary energies. I'm going to talk about that group specifically on Sunday night. Not a lot of attention has been paid to them. I will talk about them, and we'll get into that. So clearly a lot of astrological grist for the mill as well. All right. In the true spirit of love, use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and you've been watching 15 Minutes of Flame. Bye for now.